welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is the woman who knows how to set personal boundaries, Alex Standy. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
Now, Alex let me know that she's running a little bit late. She had an appointment she had to deal with, so we're hoping she's going to be able to join us on the program as soon as she can get there. I know she will because she always likes to be here every Thursday. But we are not bereft. We are not completely left out in the cold because we do have a special guest joining us today. His name is James Heppner. And like so many stories we hear here on the podcast as we interview people go through rough times. And it's always the rough times that seem to teach us the most. I mean, I think the most common storyline is, I never want to go through it again, but, and then the but fills in all the gaps about, here's what I learned. Here's how I became a stronger person. Here's what made me better. And very often it actually turns into springboards. How many times have we seen that, right? So this is going to be another case of the same kind of thing, but we love these kinds of stories, so that works out great. So James, first of all, thank you for joining us on the program today. Glad you could make it.
You're very welcome. Something that comes to heart for me is, in each butt there's a crack. Now, sorry for that little piece of humor, but I'm like, there are these two things. We're like, but it's like, yeah, but because of the crack, we can actually do something about this.
I think we'll stay away from that one, but
no,
I get the humor anyway. But you actually host your own podcast, The Weekly Wins and Losses with James Heppner. And how long have you been doing that now?
I'm doing it for about a year.
About a year, all right. And what was the impetus behind getting that whole thing started?
That's interesting. To be totally honest, and I'm just gonna have to reveal, there's actually a lot of selfish motives, right?
That's all right. Hey, that's the same for me. So no problem.
Right. I know. And I kind of read your bio and I'm like, oh, here's a brother with my heart. Right. And so sometimes what's interesting, and I went through a season over a decade ago where life got a little rough. And of course, I've been all about some self-improvement. People call me the self-help hacker for reasons, I guess, we get real quick to beneath where that switch is, that master switch, and we figure out why people do what they do real quick. And so let me just say it like this, right? So I erupt from that about a decade ago. And one of the things that I learned is that unless I'm enjoying myself, I don't really make impact. And here's the thing, I can perform and behave for people. I used to bring, I thought I brought a great performance for people. And sure enough, it was a performance. And what I mean to say is it was how I felt, but I was doing it to make them happy. And I wasn't that happy for what I was doing. So I came out of that story of my life and I said, let it be known that when I show up, I'm going to enjoy my own show. What I mean is whatever I bring forward. So to be honest, the selfish part is for me to say, I want to see who's really in here. I want to experience who this is. And even though I've said things a million times, I want to say things differently. I want to have the host probe and prod me a little differently. I want to get into the weeds on this. I want to experience what it looks like to live fully alive. And there's only one way I can say that, and that is to unfold in real time. And so I prepare ferociously, but now you and I are here. All my notes are aside, and it's you and me. So I want to discover Freudian slips and all. Who is this man? But I want to experience it by laughing with you. So there you go.
Okay, I totally am on board. The only thing I might change is take the word selfish out there just because it has pejoratives associated with it.
Yeah, I don't really
apply.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, you have to look out for yourself first. I can't remember who said it, but there was some very famous presenter who pointed out you can't help somebody else until you help yourself first. It is not possible. Until you're in a place to have something to give, you have nothing to give. So of course you have to look out for yourself first. And if you don't, you're basically setting yourself up for one of those crash and burns that we've all been through, that we've all experienced.
Yeah. Gosh, Walt, on that note, interesting, right? I can't even begin to express that. Just nailed it. And I can give an example. I used to get up out of bed about 10 minutes prior to me engaging in work. And this is, again, over a decade ago, before I just created this story of my life, right? And so I found a way to successfully sleep 18 and a half hours a day for 2.5 years. That's how far I checked out. Almost lost my business, almost lost my wife, my kids. I overdosed on melatonin, on Advil. I did everything I could to not be here, so numb out.
Wow.
2008, real estate crisis, audit happened. Son was born high functioning autism. all this pressure. Pressure is a privilege, but I was trying to eliminate it. And so if we eliminate pressure, listen, we're never going to get to our purpose, because pressure and pain bring us to presence. Presence brings us to purpose. Purpose brings us to passion. Passion is what lights our light up, right? And so, when I think about my morning routine now, unlike getting up 5 minutes before I need to engage with people, I look at it like this. When it comes to love, I look at it, it's simple. I have to build a relationship. So when I say selfish, and so you can say pejorative, building a relationship with love to me looks a little bit like, and love to me is, firstly, love is when you give and receive, and it happens simultaneously. There's no wait needed. And so when you give to yourself, you feel the give and the receive. So in the morning, the first part of my morning is my time. and I lock in, I load in, and it's my time, and I build that muscle. And any listener wants to try this, you can tap in, you can connect with me if you want, or connect to somebody else, but go on a ritual and on a routine where you literally build a relationship with yourself, and you give to yourself and you receive. So it's positive self-talk. It doesn't need to be affirmations of staring in the mirror, say, I like myself, I like myself. That probably doesn't work so well. It might
actually,
work.
I can attest it actually does work very well.
Okay, there you go.
It doesn't matter what you use, actually.
Right, exactly. It doesn't matter what you use. So the key thing is you want to develop and get to a place where you're not waiting for the receive to happen. You give and receive at the same time. And so I do this, I build a musculature. And so now when my day begins, meaning when I put myself in front of people, I'm no longer hoping and praying and wishing and that I'll get enough love, because I've already built that musculature. So I know what it feels like here. So don't get me wrong. I can be a receiver, I can be a giver, I can be anything, but it's like I find myself most helpful and I enjoy myself most. Let's say it that way. I enjoy myself most when I've done that work prior to the day beginning, right? So there you go.
Well, I think that probably sums it up very nicely, because when you do that work, we call it work. And I think we call it work primarily because we have to devote time and energy to it. Mm-hmm. But it's not really like drudgery. It's not that kind of a work. It's more like taking the time to give ourselves the attention that we need in order to be at our peak performance place that we want to be when we're dealing with other people. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, who really wants to go meet with somebody and feel like, I'm just a drudge today? I mean, right. That's not any of us. There are very few people I've ever met who wanted to be like that.
Well, I don't think, I don't know what you think, Walt. I'd like to hear your perspective. I'm willing to be wrong anywhere, but I think there's very few people that actually genuinely care to be takers. I don't think most people want to be takers, because we all know
used to. I mean,
right?
It's like being at the restaurant, right? You're at the end of the meal, and it's been a great meal. You've enjoyed yourselves. You had a great conversation with whoever you're having the meal with, and then the check comes, and one person says, "I'll take the check," and the other person says, "Oh no, I've got it," because they don't know how to receive the gift of let me take the check. It's a perfect example of what you're saying.
Beautiful. Yeah. And receiving, interesting. My wife, and she does women's work. So she has circles for women for healing and stuff. And it's really interesting. It's not at all patriarchal. And I'm not saying there's a problem with the patriarchy, but let's be honest, the feminine spirit. So I have feminine in me and masculine, you similar. The woman has masculine energy and your masculine, or the feminine energy and masculine energy. And so her work deals more in a different way. It's not a 7-step plan or a 4-step plan. The patriarch is outcome. We get here with, watch this, 4 steps we deliver. And so what's interesting is the receiving part. The receiving part is what the feminine's all about. The man's the doer and the giver. The woman's the receiver. And so the tenderness. So I often think love, when you want to have impactful love, non-impactful love is being overtly firm. It's like a lion that just growls. A non-impactful love is being like a lamb that just bleats. But the impactful love is when the lion and the lamb come together and you have a fierce love, and now you're firm and soft at the exact same time.
That's a nice way to look at it. Yeah. Right. Plus tying the lion and the lamb into the same place. That's also cool whenever you can pull that one off too.
Yeah. And the best thing about that one, it requires zero willpower. Yes. When you have to decide, what should I be, firm or soft? Like, listeners, think about this. It's mentally taxing. Willpower, you don't want to use it for something like this, always having to decide which is right, which is wrong. Do I bring firm or do I bring soft? It's more like developing the artisan from within and doing that inner work so that you can hold both that space. Because a human is both at the same time anyway. But back to your point in the receiving part, if we don't build a relationship with the inner world, and the inner world is where we receive. The outer world looks different. We want to see it tangible. We want to create. Now, often the masculine presence likes to feel value and sees value in the opening stage of life if out there's a bunch of stuff. But we all come to a place, the people, even, women who are in their masculine energy, unless you build a musculature towards the inner side of yourself, dude, you're lost.
I totally agree with that.
Empty.
So we love stories around here. So let's learn about that story, because like you experienced something leading into 2008. I experienced something leading into 2008. A lot of guests. 2008 was like this watershed moment.
Mm-hmm.
A whole bunch of people basically had to come face to face with stuff that they'd never had to come face to face with before. So give us your story. What did you experience?
Well, let's say it this way. I think the easiest way to put it down is came face to face with my value. And so to the point, just tying together, I was quite successful, externally quite successful. Didn't know how of a shell I felt on the inside. I didn't know how empty I felt on the inside until all of a sudden I wasn't able to deliver the deliverables that I once could. It just wasn't possible. And so let's just say when your value is threatened and you flinch in the eye of the storm, you're screwed. When everybody's running for the exit and you can't lead your own life and you're looking for other people to lead your life, I mean, they can help, sure, but if you don't give yourself permission to exist, and if you don't allow yourself to experience what's directly in front of you, and instead you defend that insecurity by trying to prop it up through self-talk, I'm better than this, I'm better than this, I'm better than this, I'm better than this. Listen, what's the problem with reality? What's the problem? Reality is reality. Why is it when our children come home with a test score and they're all worried they got a 72 on math, for example? Why is it that we as adults can look at them and say, well, honey, like son or whatever, hey, daughter, you got 72. Like, at least you know where you're at. Like, how isn't that the best news? You know where you're at. Like, this is just a measure. It's not a measure of your life, but it's a measure to show you where you're at in math. So it's like, hey, I'm not bringing in a more monetary gain. So why is that the bad news? Why is that? Anyway, all I can say is I built my entire world. I didn't know, but it was all, and to be honest, I was raised in a home. We all have a demand and desire, and a human will always follow someone else's desire, not their demand. The demand was in my home, be a good, honest, God-fearing boy, basically, and just do the right thing. Like, do the right thing, tell the truths, be honest, whatever. But the deep down desire was for more financial gain. My dad didn't have a large farm, so finances weren't plentiful in our household. So what did I do when I grew up? Well, I followed my dad's desire and I manifested. I got this and I got this company and it was just growing. My bank account was thick. I had toys. I had stuff, man. I had new houses, trips. I had stuff. I had a bunch of stuff. And I looked around and I never wanted it to go to my head. I remember buying cars and just kind of doing this little silent prayer and just being like, wow, I hope this doesn't grab hold of me or people don't see this for me, that they build this reference point. This is who I am. But I remember always thinking, well, I'm doing this because it's serving my business, and not knowing that I was actually propping myself up for a moment not to see myself. But, honestly, it isn't in spite of that I am who I am today. It's because of all of that. I saw who is created in a moment like that. And to be honest, my boys, I have two, 17 and 15 now. I wouldn't say that the stage of their life that they're in, like, they're also solving for different things. The first half of life, we typically solve things through looking at answer. We try to find answers. My son's on Google all the time. Answers for everything. So stability and strength coming from knowing, apparently, like being sure. You wouldn't want to be found not knowing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's like securement found if you can be big, if you can rise up and you can like land the girl, land the house, land the job, the career. You know what I mean? Second stage of life, though, it invites us to not only want to be big, but be small. Think of Icarus, flies up, but he was feeling really bad when his wings melted. But really, honestly, a human at the second stage of life, after halftime show, we all run into halftime show. We know what that looks like. Things, threshold, they hit us from a bunch of angles, pressure, all this stuff. Never been here before. And all of a sudden we find ourselves in unfamiliar territory where instead of moving forward with answers, we begin to have more questions and answers. And that's the invitation, the ushering into a rebirth if we let it serve us. And so where we can now not be threatened if we don't have an answer, but we can find strength and boldness in being both small and big. What I mean to say is, right? Right.
No, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt what you were saying.
Yeah. So when I say small, I'm not trying to say, I'm not trying to be dystopic. I'm not trying to say, oh, just feel like an ant. What I'm saying is if you go for a walk, you're both things. You're not just one. So you're actually expanding who you are, which means you make room for a bunch of things that some people will call blocks. Some people are like, why does this come in my life? actually, it's an invitation for you to onboard this and just see it for reality. Be like, oh, fair enough. I don't have to own it like this. You know what I mean? So like the smallness, think about this. You go for a walk one day and you're just thankful you're not the ant because you just walked down the sidewalk like the other day and I stepped on an anthill. I didn't know. And I crushed a bunch of ants, apparently. This is what my wife said. I'm like, oh, sorry. So I'm thankful I wasn't an ant. I'm glad I was outside.
Yeah.
You right? But then in the evening, I say, hey, baby, you would, I say to my wife, would you like to lay on the grass and look up at the stars? It's beautiful. I get to be small. I get to look up there and be like, wow, look at this. I'm just the smallest thing. I feel so good in my smallness. Thank goodness that I don't have to manage the whole universe. Oh my goodness. This is incredible. You know what I mean? So yeah.
What you're really talking about is perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Because your story is one, and this is very consistent. A lot of people have the same kind of experience expressed in different ways, but you're telling the story of how you reached what we're calling a crisis point. It was actually more of a nexus point. It was more like, this is the next stage that I'm moving into. Good. And in that point, you saw things differently. And I don't know what it is, but there's something about those kinds of transition points that become our points of growth. I haven't quite totally figured that out. I mean, certainly we experience growth whenever we encounter something that is an unpleasant experience. It could even be a devastating experience. It could be traumatic. There certainly are lots of stories along those lines. But somewhere in the midst of those experiences, there is also a shift in perspective that takes place. And that shift in perspective seems to be where the learning takes place. Something about looking at it differently. I mean, you described it in terms of the bigness and the smallness. Something about looking at what you used to look at big that you're now looking at small. That change in perspective just changes everything. And I am a big fan of perspective. My listeners know that. It's one of the reasons I've been doing the podcast for so long, because I love hearing different people. Even the ones I don't like, I still love it. I can't get enough of it. You learn so much from all those perspectives.
Well, it's like change your perspective, change your life, right? And there's a little thing that I typically use. And, to me, the short of any kind of growth is if you ever want to move from where you are to where you want to be, you want to look at the perspective of, and you want to ask yourself through the lens of dangerous, what do I currently appoint as dangerous in my life? And you come to a place of what you appoint as dangerous because you don't have want for it and you don't have need of it. And so what you don't have want for and no need for, you appoint and you label as dangerous. If you ever want to shift that around, you change your perspective and you ask, how can I make it safe? If you want to make it safe and no pie in the sky crap, but you got to do the work, and you got to do the work of saying, how can I find new need for the old unneeded and new want for the old unwanted? And that takes a lot because it shatters beliefs. But what's cool about it is you begin to realize an experience, a belief is a poor, substitute for an experience. And so do I want to hold on to a belief that's going to hold me to my antiquated route? That's already long dead and moved on? Or do I want to experience what's here right now? Do I want to live fully alive, or do I want to just please my parents or my grandma or myself, perhaps, or do I want to live? So
in fact, if you stick to a belief too, I mean, a belief actually can lead to experience. If you believe something long enough, it will turn into your experience.
Sure.
So it's like another way of saying, oh, you sure you want to believe that one? Watch out, here it comes.
Right? Totally. But yeah, to your point, well, and if you want to go on this, you can, but, or if you want to go deeper, but one of the things that I think, and you're saying, I'm not sure what it, and I don't think I know, I don't think anybody really knows what it is, but I think change comes for us all. It's like, we all have a need for variety. And so all that I can think about is there's a moment of satiation that just simply won't release from us. Like we just eventually go, I just had it. Like, so even to the point of like the other day I was going for a drive and then there was this homeless person sitting on the curb. And so a friend of mine said, we should stop and talk to him. And I said, why so? I wanted to know. And then he said, well, if we don't stop talking, I'm like, that would be horrible. He's going to be there and he's going to suffer. And I said, yeah, we could. I said, the only thing is, would you believe there's a belief, right? Would you believe if we drive by here tomorrow, he probably won't be here anymore. And he might be out on the grass, but he won't be sitting right here. And sure enough, we drove by the next, he was gone, but he was just a little down the road. So here's the thing. Us humans have a need for variety. So whether we do something or not, the human will change. We'll do something different, right? So, I mean, it all depends how stubborn and resistant you are. I was 18 and a half hours for 2.5 years sleeping every day. I was pretty resistant to the stories that were going on. When I finally let it in and finally started utilizing them instead of trying to eliminate them, it became news. It became good news. It transformed me. Because of all of that, I am now where I am. So
why do you think you did make that transition? What made you decide to leave the one pattern and start a new one?
oh, that's such a good thing. You know what? I think satiation is number one. But actually, I was satiated after about 3 days. So how come I only really
So it
decided to
wasn't
do
just that then.
it? You know, I would say grace. I would say grace. There's a little event that we went to. It was a Tony Robbins event, and it was Relationship Day. And of course, during this 2.5 years, my wife's raising the kids and blah, blah, blah. Like they were just really young, but handling the business and investment portfolio. And so we went to a Tony Robbins event, Date with Destiny, and it was day 4. And at these events, you don't sleep much. Like I think I slept 2 hours a night for the first 3 nights. Day 4 was Relationship Day. My wife gets out of bed, pops out of bed, says, honey, this is going to be great. I get to go down. And I said, you know, I'm just really tired. Because keep in mind, like I've been sleeping for 18 and a half hours for 2.5 years. Like, do you think that I'm used to being up for that? I felt kind of energized, but I kind of wanted to, you know, you want to hide again, right? You just have an old pattern. And she goes, baby, it means a lot.
That's a severe pattern. I mean, 18 and a half hours. That's a lot.
That's a lot. And to the point, when I'd get up and I'd say and go to the office, what I do is I jump in the car, I drive down close to where the office was, but I'd find an abandoned road. And we lived in southern Manitoba, which is directly above North Dakota. So it's prairie farmland. So I'd find a little side road and I'd take the car and just park it on some abandoned farmyard, hop in the back seat, melatonin and Advil, and sleep with a blanket back there. So wow. I was in the bedroom for 18 and a half hours, but then I was checking out in the car. If I'd say, you know, honestly, it wasn't pretty. But so to your point, how did this happen, right? The catalyst. So she goes down, and what do? I take all my melatonin. I'm like, oh, I get to just check out. This is gonna be great. You know, you're just fantasizing about this moment again. You could be by yourself, and I mean the event was great, but I'm like, yeah, dude, I just need some sleep. Like I got to get a little bit old back in my life, you know. And so I just shut those blinds. You know, in the hotel, you just make them real tight. I made them all tight, and I put like a chair up against so it was nice and snug and nice and black. Hopped under the covers and swallowed the pills. And I was comfortable for about 10 seconds.
Right.
And all of a sudden, I'm like, wait a minute. My wife's been here with me for 2.5 years. And she said, it'd mean the world to me if you came down, and you can't do this one thing for her. I popped out of there like a firecracker, white as a sheet. I went downstairs, opened the door, entered the room looking for Team Purple because that was my team. My wife wasn't on my team. They keep couples apart. That's the idea, right? So I'm looking for my team, and I'm walking up the side. But as soon as I entered the door, I'm taking a few steps in. And Tony Robbins at the very front of the room, and he's doing an intervention, and he's helping somebody through depression. And listeners, don't hear me say this directly because there is a real thing about some people do have depression, like clinically or
it's a real thing. Sure.
Yeah, it's a real thing. But a lot of it, at least mine, was something. Typically we do depression. We first typically do depression. We act like we're sadder than ever and the world's coming to get us and we're falling apart. And so I'm trying to find Team Purple, and he's talking about how depression is the most selfish thing. And I'm sitting here going, holy smokes, to the point on pressure. I'm going, do you know, I'm thinking to myself, how much pressure I'm already feeling? And he's just laying it on, just going, boom, boom. And then he comes walking towards me, turns around, leaves that person, comes to another person, and he doesn't walk in my aisle, but towards my way. I'm like an aisle over, but he's walking directly towards me. And I feel like his eyes are staring straight through me. You know how it is when you go to an event, he's talking to everyone, but you feel like it's you. You know what I mean?
With a good speaker, absolutely.
Right. And so I sit my ass down, and just like that, he goes, and he just says something. And whoever's been at these events, you guys know what I'm talking about. The crowd just gets up and they start cheering, and then they start crying, and then they start clapping, and then they start crying, just emotions up and down, up and down. You're developing that musculature. And then he goes, okay, stay standing. Now do some group work. And I'm like, group work? Like, no, I'm just going to sit here because I feel like I don't belong. I'm a piece of crap, basically. I can't even hold my life together, blah, blah, blah. And then somebody in the group was so kind. They came over and said, hey, would you like to come join us? And I'm like, no, I'm okay. And all of a sudden in that moment, I remember thinking, damn, my life's just moving. And the fact that my wife didn't force me to come, she said it'd mean a lot. The same thing happened here. There's no resistance from anybody. People said, do what you want. I'm like, I'm creating this shit. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. And all of a sudden, song started playing, and then the shell of the ego broke. And they say if the shell of the ego breaks once properly, it never has to do that work again. And I got up, again, white as a sheet. I don't know if I was properly dressed because I went down pretty quick. And the group welcomed me, and let's just say it like this. That was the end of that chapter of life. And I have such an insatiable desire to live. I love participating with what's directly in front of me. I just love life. I love being here. Instead of being like, I want to be gone, I love being here. And so anyway, there you go.
That's really clear. I mean, it's very obvious in the way that you express yourself. I'm curious to know about the comment you just made about the shell breaking, the egoic shell breaking. And I'll tell you as sort of like a prelude, I have this thing that I think we're really rough on the ego. We have a tendency as a population to just beat up on our egos, like, oh, my ego is such a problem. It's always in the way. It screws up. It does all this. It does. The ego is. I don't know if you know what the root of the word is. The Greek ego means me. It's who I am. It's my it's my sense of identity. So anytime that we're complaining about the ego, we're complaining about our own identities, which always strikes me as being, wait a minute. Oh, hold on. Let's be really careful here because we got to be nice to ourselves.
Agreed. And that's a very good play because I think a lot of people, and so you've obviously stumbled into this. So thanks for bringing that up. A lot of people, a couple of months ago, I had this person I was talking with, and then this individual said to me, "Oh yeah, I worked on my ego. I don't have ego anymore." I'm like, "Whoa, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. You're in trouble." Because here's the thing: what we want as human beings, if you think of your shoulders, the ability to handle and hold a load without exploding outward, that's what life is. Challenges come in your life, and they're invitations for us to expand our holding ability. And so ego, we want to build healthy ego container. That's really because ego, the container, absolutely. Without ego, you have a problem. Now there's unhelpful. So I'm always about experiencing two sides of things. So if you look at a coin, it has two sides, benign and hostile side, not good and bad, benign and hostile. So we have to understand this side and the other side. And so if we just see it makes sense to me why individuals do this though. Because they're looking to connect to people really quickly. It's like complaining about the weather. So first, what you do is oftentimes people will connect through problem. But unless you connect to something other than problem and possibility, you're going to be sitting there looking at one side of the coin. Right? And so at the end of the day, the possibility of the ego. So the problem of the ego, well, there is a problem, sure. And a lot of people need ego control. So for example, religious orthodoxy structure creates ego control. That's the helpful side of a structure. It helps to a status hierarchy, though I'm not a fan of. I'll tell you one thing though, status hierarchy can be beneficial.
It serves definite roles.
Right? Because where people have too much ego, it's like I watch a football team and the coach basically says you're here or you can go home. You know what I mean? He claims that spot, right? And so ego container to the point. What we want to do is we want to, in my opinion, we want to be able to build that when things come into us, that we do not run from the feeling of I've never been here before. Can I handle this? Instead of letting all those doubts shape us away from taking proper action, they're designed to prime us and point us towards taking another step in the space of being like, watch this, I'm not going to explode. Fragments won't fly from shrapnel, won't go out there, but I'm going to let in real time. So it's like stress test this, and your shoulders get a little wider every time. And so that's how, in my opinion, you can handle larger challenges, greater collaboration, business, whatever it ends up being, it just comes.
Okay, so with this as a foundation, let's go back to the comment you made because I want that comment in context. I want to really grasp what you're saying. We're talking about the ego kind of shattering, and once you shatter it, once you've done it, you don't have to go back through that again. So now that we've framed it, let's talk about what does that mean to you when you say that the ego is shattered?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I love that, and you're taking us right back to the root. You know how we read quotes about leadership and authenticity. You know how we read things that reveal that it's about humility and humbleness. If we can do this skin deep. We go, yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense. The only thing is to be humble, but not throw the white flag. Like surrender to me doesn't mean throw the white flag. Surrender says, I am not just one side of the coin. I'm not just big. Like I am both big and small. Big and small. The good news is I get to now be both. So it's to be humble is, in my opinion, so when the shell of the ego cracks, you finally look at, so when I was sitting my ass in that chair at the Tony Robbins event and everybody was inviting me to come and join, here's the thing what I was still not comfortable with, revealing that I was insecure. I was still wanting to prop myself up in I'm not insecure. And you see this like in leadership often, like the easiest way to activate your confirmation bias and to show you're insecure is when anything happens that's good, you say it's me. Anything that happens bad, you say it's them.
Yes,
that's the easiest way, right? That's very common. It's the simplest. I mean, there's lots of biases, but that's the easiest way to activate confirmation bias. And if you want to see nothing that is the truth, you will activate confirmation bias, right?
Sure.
So to me, cracking the shell of the ego, it's a little bit like, so there I am, I'm birthed into this world, and like we all do, we go through the birth canal, and that apparently they say induces trauma. No matter how you're born, it induces trauma. Like you're nice and comfortable on the inside. Trauma, not as in we get all worried about it, like not that kind of trauma, but just like, there's trauma apparently. Now here's the thing. If you look at it, it's like ego, and to your point, ego is beneficial. So we have the shell that forms around it. And the shell isn't the bad news. It's just that shell keeps us nice and protected until all of a sudden what worked no longer works. And so, see, we once built on certainties and answers as a child, but then when midlife crisis comes, when everything comes together, and all of a sudden there's a crack, and we're like, oh no, what's cracking? Am I going to go through like nasty trauma? We get to decide if this is just news, and we get to participate with it. And it's interesting because there's a rebirthing into a new life that now has us not have absolute need for feeling just big. Now we can be both big and small. And so we come out of there. So I guess what I'm meaning to say in general is, when you get to see yourself and you realize, you know what? My leadership is founded on both that I know and I don't know. That's security and insecurity at the same time. And I think the reason that that's good is because now you're open to connecting with people constantly, because though I have a perspective, this is just my perspective. And so I already know what I know. So I'm looking for people to be like, well, how about this? How about this? And that makes me go, really? I have no idea what you're talking about. Tell me more. Instead of being like, well, no, this is how it works.
And that's what I think the real hard edge of that shell you were talking about is really all about. The shells, I've heard many people talk about how that shell is just the ego protecting us. It's like the safety zone, and that's certainly a very reasonable perspective. To me, the shell is more about, this is a limit I'm not willing to let anybody go beyond. I don't care what the circumstances are. I don't care what's going on in my life. I don't care how bad things get. None shall pass.
Yeah.
And what shatters is the illusion that we create for ourselves that none should pass. We finally decide, God, this is just miserable. I hate it with that nobody can pass here. I hate that I can't pass. I hate the lack of passing.
Right?
So I'm done with the shell. And that's what the shattering of the shell really is.
I love that, because it's like this, right? And gosh, Walt, you bring up so much for me. It's like, if there's not a crack, there's no light that's coming in.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? So for me, it's a little bit like when I think about developing boundaries, like there's so much talk about boundaries. Well, somebody, past president, tried building a boundary, and it's a wall. And a wall, the wall,
part of a wall, but that's another story.
a part of the wall. And the wall was designed to hold people out.
Yeah.
But that's what an insecure person does. See, you're fortifying your shell. You're making more and more secure around it because you're so bloody insecure. That's the only reason why you fortify, right? So you're so insecure. So here's the thing. Boundaries, creating a healthy boundary, is actually all about creating a permeable boundary that you have control over, that you say, listen, I'm doing this to strengthen our relationship. So this is the intention of a healthy boundary. You say, listen. So it's like a friend the other day, I said to him, hey, listen, this may not matter to you, but one of the things that I value is being on time. And when you come and you see me, sometimes you come 15 minutes late. Now it's half hour late. And so I say to him, so for me, I really want to build a deeper relationship with you. I like where we're going. I want to build deeper. But I'm having a difficult time really building a more solid, deep relationship with you because this happened. So here's the thing. You can keep doing whatever you want. I'm just going to let you know, if you show up late, I just won't be at the door. So here's the thing. I'm taking complete onus. He doesn't have to do anything, but I'm literally saying I'm responsible. I'm responsible. And that's what freedom is. Freedom is that we are responsible. Autonomy and freedom are two different things. Autonomy Autonomy, people say they want freedom, but actually what they want is autonomy, because autonomy says I can do whatever I want when I want without any responsibility. That's autonomy. Freedom is saying it's one notch forward. Freedom is saying I now link to my passion and I'm going to be responsible for it in the best of ways. I mean, through psychoanalytic terms, this is how they define it, right? So I don't know. I mean, right?
Well, it's true. And I think that the key to understanding what you just described is to understand what the word responsible means. The word responsible derives from the more simplified word respond. Able to respond is the way I like to think.
Good point.
So if you are responsible, you are able to respond. And it's our responses that give us our superpowers. It's our responses that enable us to make anything happen in our lives that we want to have happen in our lives. We have a tendency as humans to think that things happen to us, and so those things are what are driving our experiences. But it's really not the things that are driving our experiences. It's our responses to the things. Because every time we respond, we encourage more along the same lines of whatever our response was. So we get more and more of the way we respond. If we respond in X manner, then we tend to get more X type events coming our way. It just happens over and over and over again. So really, responsibility means I am able to respond, and that gives me my freedom.
I love that. That's the highest state. The highest state of action is initiating, right? And so not reacting, but responding through an initiative heart. Yeah. Right. And so to me, it brings to heart a little story. I'll never forget. I've been in this work now. I'm a coach, a strategic results coach, and I have a few platforms that I host people on, and have a podcast, and I do talking keynotes and stuff. I'll never forget. I was mapping out my year, and I was looking at my client list, and I was looking at people that were reaching out to me, and all of a sudden it dawned on me there was a certain segment of people that for some reason they either just disappeared, or it was kind of weird things that happened. I didn't really, and then I just said, I wonder what it is. So, back to your point, like respond, how will I respond? Meaning, am I going to sit here and wait for things to clear up, or what am I going to do about it? I get to participate in something. I don't have to control them. That never works anyway. Controlling somebody across the finish line never works. So don't be
good luck with that one, but yeah.
Yeah. Right. So here's the thing. I said, how am I going to respond? And what was interesting is I realized that there's a big difference between able and willing. So I remember going, Kate, is this specific person, is he able to be on this call, or is he able to do this? And then sometimes I said, yes, check mark. But then I said willing. So unless those two are both in harmony, it's not going to happen. Some people are able, meaning they can fund it. They're able to get off work, but are they willing? No, because even if they show up, they're not willing to be there. They're like, I'm out.
And there's lots of different ways that we can be unwilling to be there, whatever the there is. Obviously, it's going to vary from one situation to the next, but people find lots of different ways to not be there and to decide to not be there.
To not participate.
To not participate, yeah.
Even if somebody goes, listen, I know this might be like really going deep into your ethos, but here's a new perspective. Would you be willing to participate with this and just try it on? We can put your moral righteousness on later on if you want it. You know what I mean, right? But people go, no. So they're not willing. You know what I mean? It's all safe, but not willing. So there you go.
And that's the essence of living in a world of creators. Yes. Because that's what we do. We live in a world of creators. Even those who don't seem on the surface to be creating, everybody's creating. We can't help it, actually.
That's all we do.
It's not possible to be alive without creating. One goes hand in hand with the other. So we're all creating. And when you have a bunch of people creating, and they're all creating differently, different stuff that they want to create, there are going to be lots of opportunities to say, well, that person's creating something I want to have nothing to do with, and I'm creating something they want to have nothing to do with. And that's perfectly okay. The only time, like you were pointing out, the only time we really get into trouble is when we say, well, you got to create the way I want you to create, or my life is going to be ruined. It doesn't take us very far.
It doesn't take us very far. Something that just comes up for me as you're talking there, like I'll never forget when, how you said earlier, you got to be gentle with yourself. You got to be real, but you got to be gentle. Like I'm just empathetic now towards all the people. And I was the same way. And I mean, we can talk the other side in a bit, but let's say it like this, right? If you're going to hold yourself responsible for the mess that you created throughout the day, and it's time to go to bed, if you're going to hold yourself responsible for it, then you're always going to remember that life is stumbling along. Life isn't about taking the right step. It's taking a step, just being courageous enough to take a step. Because here's what's interesting. The human actually never, ever acts, it's impossible for the human to act, sort of say like this, because of our survival instincts and our primary, or how we're primarily drawn to protect and preserve our life. It's impossible to act a problem. Like my father-in-law is an alcoholic. If I observe his life, I say it's a problem. But you know why he drinks? Because it's a solution. So I think we have to be gracious when we look back on our day and we're like, yeah, we were responsible for creating a mess. So we can create messes, or we have to look at it and be like, well, wait a minute, it was a solution for what? And then we have to first get real with why it was a solution. And then we get to ask ourselves, well, that's really cool. So not be hard on ourselves, but then in that moment of awareness, we de-escalate the whole thing. And then we give ourselves a moment of reprieve, and we can sleep, we can wake up, and we be like, do I want to create that kind of outcome again? Is that my solution? And if it's not, we'll naturally do something a little different. So we're just taking a step along. Always saying take the right is so much pressure. Let's just take a step. Everything was designed to point us an arrow for the next action. It's just a proper action. I think we get into the weeds if we go right, wrong, good, bad.
Oh, absolutely. I have, talk about weeding. I have completely weeded the words good and bad on my personal vocabulary. I mean, I'll end up talking about it on the podcast because people bring it up and so forth. But in terms of how I talk to myself and how I relate, to my wife and so forth, I never include that as part of my thought process. I've eliminated, because my God, there are so many ways it leads you astray. I don't think there's ever been a time when it's led me to something good. It never led me to anything that I actually wanted. It never led me to anything that I enjoyed. It was always just this ethical, moral morass that was constantly going on. And once I escaped from it, I said, whoa, what the hell was that? I don't want to have anything to do with that anymore. So yeah, I kind of left it behind pretty severely.
Well, so here's the thing. Like, what happens if we don't enjoy our behavior? If we don't enjoy the feelings that we have when we behave certain things? I don't know about you, but we could do more of the same and get more miserable. But it's like, I'm not going to do that again.
I'm good at that, by the way. I do know how to do that. I've been down that road.
Likewise. So we want to learn things too, right? Yeah, I get it.
Oh yeah, but I really do like we talk a lot here on the show in a lot of contexts about the value of appreciation. Appreciating what goes on in your day, appreciating what you're trying to get to, all that kind of thing. But I also love that you're finding a way, and this has been pretty much the theme of our conversation here, the way you've been presenting yourself, finding appreciation in the things that you don't normally appreciate. Finding appreciation in the things that you would previously reject as being bad or unfortunate or terrible, or I don't want to have anything to do with it, or get that out of my orbit. And you're finding appreciation in the thing itself. You're not so often we talk about, and this is a very valid approach. If you're not used to doing the appreciation thing, it's good to kind of dance around the negative stuff for a bit, just so you can get into the habit of appreciating. But the ultimate goal is to get to the point where you're talking about, which is where you can appreciate even the stuff that you don't like, even the stuff that you really don't want to have in your life, but you find a way to appreciate it anyway. That is probably the most powerful thing any of us can ever learn to do. I don't think there's anything that actually learns more for us.
I would agree 100%. To your point, I think the big problem in society today is we have developed what we think is okay, and that is selective gratitude. If we're going to be selective, if we are going to only be grateful for our preferences, we got a hard thing coming. It
continues to be, yeah.
It continues to be exactly. And so, just to build around that narration, if you don't mind, I'll just share a quick little story.
Love stories, sure. Are you kidding? Come on, bring them on.
So just rewinding the tape again. So, the story of the TR, I'm sitting at the event, and then I had a breakthrough, and the song comes on, and I was changed. But here's the thing, and listeners, you can tap into this. So sometimes we feel like we're changed, but then life shows up, and then the stress test reveals. I'll never forget, I was at home. It's 2:00 in the morning, and I woke up, and I'd had a dream that somebody was coming down to our house with either a loaded gun to kill my wife, or I could hear somebody sharpening a knife. Somebody was going to come kill her. And I'm like, this is kind of a crazy dream. And so I'm one of these people. It's like, reality is reality, and fantasy is fantasy, and it's a dream. And so, but oftentimes I look at dreams as something that we're just processing things through different visuals, and it's not exactly that. The strange thing is, though, this one really got me. And so I just got up and I started walking around the house, and then I decided, it's not going away. So I'm going to take a cold shower. So I take a cold shower. And of course, now I'm really awake, right? And so now I'm really like, okay, now life's going to come back, and it's just going to be like, okay. But what was weird is the more that I was, so back to, I'll just pause it. Remember, the story or the situation or my behaviors that took me into that negative part for so long was that I was trying to eliminate what was pressing upon me. And so this was pressing upon me and I was trying to eliminate. And the more I was trying to get rid of it, the deeper it got, the worse it got.
Right.
And the strange thing is, you know how it is. It's like, this is the stress test. Like the body goes, yeah, we're going to go back to the old place. Right. But however, I had broken through and my body wanted to do something different. So what happens? It's like you're in a state of dysbiosis. I don't know if that's the proper term, but you're trying to, like, you're in a decentered place. And so what do you do when you're not standing on sure ground? Well, I just kept walking around the house. And it was interesting. It got so bad that I'm like, holy smokes, this might be real. Like this is weird, but it might be real. Anyway, all that I can say, I went back to the bedroom. And so I was raised in a home that was very Christian.
Okay.
And I remember my dad was a pastor of a mega church at the time when I was a child. And my dad always saying to me, you know, where 2 or 3 are gathered, there I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can come to the Lord, whatever that was for him, and you can ask all things in God's name, he will provide, or something like this. So I'm laying behind her, and Meg, she's just like a 4'9" 3/4 inch human. Like she's a Martian. She's a small little thing. And she's laying, just imagine, she's laying in bed and she's in a ball. Like she's just curled up. Right. And I'm like, you know, I don't want to wake her. So I'm just going to like tuck behind her, like lay spoon. And I threw my arm over her. And I remember just thinking, well, I don't want to wake her. So I'm not going to like pray with her or anything like that. But I'm just going to like be with her. Perhaps going to go away. And the strange thing is kept getting worse and worse and worse. And finally I'm going, I better wake her up. But before I do that, I'm like, I'm just going to do like a prayer of my own, like a prayer, like just saying, God, universe, whatever this is. So again, listeners, however you show up in the world, that's up to you. It's not for me to say. I do have a belief. I'm still a believer, but I'm what you would call a religionless Christian. Like if the stories are true or not, it's like the stories of love, basically. And they bring me to a higher state of being, right? Whatever that looks like. Anyway, make a long story short. So there I am, and I'm laying behind her, and I start the prayer. And the prayer goes, God, and I'm asking. Now, I remember Tony Robbins at the event saying, don't be an asshole. Don't be an asshole. So I'm beginning to ask for the removal of this. I'm still not hearing that I'm still looking to push this away. It's looking to pierce me. It's looking to penetrate me. Why am I feeling so threatened? Like, who am I? What kind of version of a man? I can let my shoulders get a little broader. It's okay. Let's see what happens. It'll be all right. Right? Anyway, so I had said this, and then all of a sudden, it seriously felt so horrible. I'm like, I got to stop this shit. Like, what am I saying? Wow. I don't know what's going on. And it seriously felt nasty. Like, I was beginning to shake, to be honest. It was just really weird. And then I remember thinking, what did I just learn? I came back. What did I learn? So to your point on appreciation, I learned where the mind is grateful, it can't be in fear.
That's true.
And what I did is I said, okay, how could I be grateful for this? Speaking of being open to a new perspective, participating, are you willing to take part in what's here? And instead of it just being the bad news sent to take me down, how about if it's just news? Meaning, how can I actually be grateful? I'm grateful. James, remember, keep the facts intact, because I'm not a hyperbolist, and neither was what I saw from Tony. He keeps the fact intact, is what you do. You always keep, you don't, enter into the Enron space.
Enron space.
You don't want to go there.
That's good.
You're right. You don't want to go there. Just cook the books. We're not as bad as the numbers say. So the numbers are wrong. We're right. No, wrong. That's not good. I mean, good, bad. That's not good. Sorry. Anyway. But here's the thing, right? If you're seeing fantasy too much, that's not good. So you don't want to do crystal ball gaze. You want to look at the lens of reality. So I'm looking at reality going, well, what's good here? And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I happen to know this thought, this feeling comes from something, somewhere. I have no idea. The only thing is, I happen to know that there's a force of nature. Like I got a banana tree. I live in Vancouver here. It's not giving me bananas. But I'll tell you something, even if I wanted that tree to grow, if it didn't want to grow, it wouldn't. Like there's a force, something is helping nature along. It isn't just me. Like I'm not holding the stars in the sky. Like I'm part of life, but there's some force of something doing something. It's a greater force that I get to just enjoy, basically. And I get to stand beside the creator and co-create with that force. You know what I mean? Anyway. So what I said is I decided, okay, there's obviously a force that's more powerful than I've referenced for. And that's authentically what I could be grateful for. Just say there's a force, power, So all I said, and I thought to myself, well, that's all you're going to say? You're not going to say anything more? And I said, well, just start with that. And I started with that, and I just finished saying it. So I just said audibly. I'm not saying that's the formula, but I just finished saying it. And Walt, I kid you not, I had in the moment, I don't know how else to say it, but like a transfiguration or like a transfiguration. It was behind us was the bathroom, and it felt like the window opened up, and there was like a wisp of air that zipped through over top of me. And we lived in the middle of the cold Canada, so we had tons of snow outside. Middle of winter, -40, water freeze at 0. It was -40, drifts of snow, and that wisp of wind came over me, and I could feel it was like fast, and it's like the front door opened up in our house. It didn't physically open up, but I could feel it opening up, and it whipped across our yard like, as fast as air goes, and it cleaned all the snow off, and the grass went from brown to green instantly, and all the leaves came to attention, and everything just stood straight up. And from that moment, well, my life's never been the same. I kid you not, what happened for the next 2 weeks, it was almost too much for me to bear. In those next 2 weeks, so many things happened in my life, and I knew each one of them. I would have a premonition 15 minutes before the phone would ring, and I'd write down, this person's calling me, our house will sell at this rate. Boom, it happened. It happened so often. I'll never forget this one moment. I was back at the office now, and I'm at the office, and it's weird. I just all of a sudden felt, like this feeling without trying, I'm going to go get my coat. I'm going to walk to the door. I'm like, as I put the coat on, I'm like, where are you going? I said, I'm going. And I thought, where am I? I said, I'm going for lunch. But I didn't have a car. My car wasn't there at that time. I opened the door. My wife pulls underneath the foyer, stops the car, and says, honey, I'm taking you for lunch. This happened over and over and over again. Walt, I'll take Kelly. I can cry saying this because there's so much gratitude for this. But I was in such state of flow. Gratitude changed my life.
It makes total sense to me. It doesn't surprise anybody listening to the show.
Right.
That's really what law of attraction is all about. The idea that you attract into your life what it is you give your attention to. And you went through an experience that was transformative. But like you said, you also did the transforming. It was both at the same time. And when you did that, you ended up, through whatever process, letting go of old restrictions you'd held on to, old limitations and so forth. The story you told it in sort of a metaphorical fashion because that's the way you experienced it. But the metaphor still held true. The metaphor was, I had these old fears. I went through an appreciative experience, and in doing so, I let go of the fears, and all of a sudden, the world opened up for me. That's essentially what the story adds up to.
100%.
And that story is the story of basically connecting to what we call source.
Yeah.
Universe,
I love it.
God,
Source.
whatever.
Love it.
Source, the original source energy that creates everything, right? That is connecting to source, and that connection is a beautiful experience. And certainly, I can see why you would find a total appreciation for gratitude. Yeah, I mean, wow, who wouldn't, right?
So it's like, exactly. So if you think about it, if someone says to you that doesn't work, if you've had the experience, that's different than a belief. If you've had the experience, you don't even have a desire to defend it. If someone says what you're saying is horseshit, I'm like, okay, fair enough for you, it might be, but I don't have a response. I'm like, oh, okay, so what do you want to talk about? Golf? I don't know.
Well, there's an interesting thing about belief, and I don't know if you've heard this. If you have, stop me. But this is something that I firmly believe in, and this comes out of the teachings of Abraham Hicks, if you know who that is. Esther Hicks is a channeler of this group of beings called Abraham. But anyway, one of the teachings that comes out of it is a belief is a thought that you think over and over again. So the more that you focus on something, and you were doing that. I mean, for whatever reason, you had this thing going on. My wife's going to be killed. It's going to be a knife. It's going to be a gun. It's going to be whatever. And you were building a belief there. And you were building it by just giving it more and more attention. And then you had an event occur where you let go of that belief. And in letting go of that belief, you changed the way the universe was aligning to you, to your experience. And you experienced that change as a massive shift with wind blowing through the house and all kinds of stuff being shifted all over the place. But it was a shift. It was a shift that happened because you changed your belief. So the belief actually played a very important role. There was one belief you let go of, and you replaced it with a new belief based on gratitude. And that ushered in an entire new set of circumstances that played out really coolly over the next few weeks as one thing after another. You would focus on something and it would occur. You'd focus on something else and it would occur. You were experiencing instant law of attraction, just manifestation, bang, 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 bang. And it was probably freaky, but it's also fun at the same time.
Oh, it was incredible. Like, seriously, it was, I mean, I still have shards of that. Like, it happens for me every now and again, but it was right, of course, because I had experience. And once you experience something, now it's your reality. Now you know it's possible. Right. And so you can't go back. And so they actually kind of happen with repetition. It's just that I don't get, like, I wasn't aware. And I wasn't like, to your point earlier, you said we are the creators. Like, we get to create our own existence and how we perceive. And it's interesting because if you think about beliefs, you think about what does it require if you're a business, or let's say you're in a relationship and it gets a little rough. What does it require for you to persevere? It takes something deeper than just something that you're formulating in the moment. It takes some etchings or something from within to hold you there. And a belief is something that's kind of deeper than just the moment by moment. And so when you think about beliefs, literally are the direct infrastructure that create. Elon Musk, for example, blows up how many spaceships, right? But that deep belief actually creates something. Yeah. So to be honest, even if this person wasn't coming to kill, if there was nobody there, if I would keep ruminating on this, I could actually create a situation where somebody would hate my wife because I'm trying to bring manifestation to my belief. Yeah. You know? It's just the bizarrest thing. So anyway, yeah.
But it's also an educational point too. I think that's where this kind of ties back to the very beginning of our conversation, where you were talking about how you appreciate two sides of the same coin. You love both sides, the good and the bad, however you want to label it. You love both of them. And the way I think that it ties back is when we fully realize that, to put this in kind of a negative terminology, we're playing with a loaded gun. We have this ability to create with our thoughts, with our mind, that becomes the foundational point that we take our action after those thoughts, and the two coalesce together, and they lead us into this wonderful playground where literally we create our reality. When you get that, and when you start applying it on a more regular basis, I mean, it's a wondrous shift in understanding. Because I know, I suspect this is probably true for you. I know it's true for me. For years, I thought I lived in a universe, not a deterministic universe, but it was a universe of logic. It was a universe of pure cause and effect. There was no spirit. All that stuff was a bunch of hooey. And there's just the physicality of everything there, and that's about all there is to it. And then it's up to us to just deal with all that. And when I finally achieved my own moment where I recognized I am creating all this, it was a shock. It was a real
I know that can be so humbling, right? Well, what happened, I know for me, my experience, it's like, and listeners, check in with yourself. Like, when you realize that you've been creating some of the own bullshit, you've been creating the bullshit, the stories that you thought or the situation, the economy, and you realize, I brought this upon myself. It can be a really humbling moment, and actually a moment of deep, and that's the beautiful thing of regret and guilt is different than shame, because guilt is like, I don't want to do that anymore. So guilt just holds you to, like, I might want to make a different decision now because I don't want to do that anymore. But ashamed is like where it's identity, right? But what happened to you, or what happened for you?
Oh, more than I can explain in a minute and a half, which is about what we have left on the podcast. But let's just say it was a series of transformative events. As I was trying to understand, it was at a time I was trying to learn how the law of attraction actually worked. I heard about it. I said, is that really true? And it just turned into this whole thing. But it's about a half-hour story, so we'll have to save that for another.
I love it. Yeah, perhaps you can
before we're done here, we can't be done yet, because there's one more thing we have to do. We got to find out more about how we find your podcast and how we find out more about you. And if somebody wanted to reach out to you, how could they find you?
I love it. Okay. So my podcast, you can find it anywhere, Apple, iTunes, different, platforms, Spotify, wherever you're at. Just go to Weekly Wins and Losses with James Heppner. So that's JamesHeppner.com, and you can tap in there. And now when it comes to finding me, You can listen for free, get information, and just enjoy that. Some of you might be curious, and if you are, those of you who feel a nudge, you'll know who you are. And you have two options. Basically, you can reach out if you want the real intimate experience. And some people are like, I gotta just go deeper. I gotta go find out why I do what I do. And that's what I help people. We get to that place pretty quickly. I'm all interested in going like a mile deep on the things that matter and an inch deep on all the rest, because I want to find the master switch. And when we find the master switch, you get to do work that's worthy, effective, efficient work. Why bother working in all the areas where you're not going to get any gains, right? So you want to find the master switch, one-on-one coaching, and it's a results coaching experience. And we go super deep. And of course, because it's just you and I, we get to get beneath the surface of your individual experience of life, and we get to align with your strengths. And from that place of strength, we get to sculpt, craft, and design a personal success and fulfillment formula that is unique, not to everyone, but to you. Again, this is only for those that are truly interested. So for that, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to www.jamesheppner.com. Again, JAMESHEPPNER.com. I'm sure you can put it in the show notes. Now, a gift for everyone. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, absolutely. We will definitely include it in the show notes. I didn't mean to interrupt you. So
sorry. Sorry. I just want to be here. I'm talking kind of fast. I used to have a really bad stutter because I think so fast. And they said I didn't have a speech impediment, just that your tongue can't keep up with your thinking. So I got to slow it down. Sorry.
So my dad used to have a phrase about that. He says, my tongue got in front of my eye teeth and I couldn't see what I was saying.
It's so good. So here's the thing. I got a gift for every one of you, whether you want to do one-on-one coaching or whether you each want to have an experience. And experience two sides of the coin, meaning try this. Take a coin, look at it, and what you look at, convince yourself all that you see is all that there is. Put the coin down and say there's not another side. It's just one side. Weekly wins and losses is like picking up the coin and you finally get to see what this is. This is real. This is both sides. Okay. And so it's insanity to try to convince yourself that the coin is one side. It is both sides. So unless we learn to build a relationship with the other half of what all reality is, which is inevitably the human says, am I winning or am I losing? Okay. It's all for gain, but we that's how we do things, right? The primitive self does it like that. So the experience is called the Virtual Weekly Wins and Losses Global Call. Honestly, I think it's quite the experience. Frankly, and I know I'm biased on this, I think it's one of the better, if not the best way, for me anyway, to bring raw truth to what your last week is really all about. It's no charge, happens every Friday at noon. And when you jump on this little call, you're going to have a profound experience. It's actually pretty simple, but you get to clear the deck of all the unhelpful stings of the last week's losses so that when your new week begins, you're best able to launch out of the gate invigorated and ready to take that bold, courageous action forward without all the unhelpful side of hesitation and delay. Of course, if we don't get rid of and deal with things properly and just speak it, the sting remains. And now we only take action towards things where we think we may not lose and we're missing all. Again, you're making a decision from a place of fear in that place where you always make the wrong decision. So I invite each one of you, if I think about this, to show up and share as you wish. So share what? A win, a loss like other people do, or you just observe and what other people share and what stood out for them. So we're going to have a little teaching. There's a little musculature build, and we do it right in the beginning. And then after we go straight into flow, it's a short little 45-hour long little talk every week, free, no charge. So honestly, come and master the art of being prepared for anything. Win, lose, or draw. I kid you not. No hyperbole. Keep the facts intact. And come and learn how to authentically celebrate both a win. I mean, celebrate both a win and a loss in real time. Every time. So for that, you just simply go to www.weeklywinsanдлosses.com. And then halfway down the page is a little link that says join this Friday call. Click on that. You'll be put on the list. I'll send you a Zoom link. You'll be in. We'll see you there. So it was a pleasure being on the show with you all. I had so much fun.
I'm so glad you made it. And we will make sure to include both the links to the jamesheppner.com and to the special Friday event.com, which I'm not saying properly here, but I'll make sure that both of those links are in the show notes. But thank you very much for being on the show. And thank you for all the work that you're doing. I especially love your approach. I love the title of your podcast, Weekly Wins and Losses with James Heppner, because it really zeroes in on what you're about. You're about celebrating all of it. There's nothing better than that. I love that.
Well, and the one thing that I like about you, some people say, who is the person you're talking with? And I didn't see clouds, but I can see a bunch of stars around you. So you're amongst the stars, my friend. So you are a star of my show today. I mean that seriously. It was good. It's just, I can see you've done the work, which is just an honor to be with you. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Well, like I tell everybody else, the reason I have that background is I like to have a reminder that tells me the universe has my back. That's my way of
that's so good.
of that.
Oh, good job.
All right. So thank you very much. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.